Hey Bookworms, welcome back to another best 5, worst 5 videos, and today I will be talking about my favorite and least favorite book sequels. Now, a few notes before we begin. First of all, as always, this is my opinion. If it doesn't match yours, it's fine with me. It should be also fine with you. It's a good thing that we human beings have different opinions. Second, I might be talking about book sequels, but I will also refer to prequels, one book in a series, and also even spin-offs, as long as they were written by the same author as the original, so no Gregory Maguire here. And now, after enough introduction in my opinion, in no particular order, let's begin. And I would like to begin with the best book sequels in my opinion. Now, because we'll have in both lists the famous YA series, let's start with this one. And number 1 is Harry Potter 3, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. I love the Harry Potter series. It's actually one of the only YA series that I actually love and kind of respect. And I grew up reading them, and if you've seen previous videos, I said it before. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I did find that the first two was pretty naive and childish. And as I was reading them, and I was like, what, 11, 12, Harry's age, and I thought, that's how this series is gonna be like. Harry goes to Hogwarts, strange things start happening, Harry and his friends investigates, and at the end he has to confront Voldemort. All good and well, thought, it's gonna be a fun series, but then the third book came, and that's where things started getting a bit more serious, a bit more mature, a bit darker. And to this day, this is my favorite book in this entire series. It's the only book that actually managed to kind of scare me at certain points. And it was just when things are getting more mature and more complex, and it's the best. I started with J.K. Rowling, so let's make the second entry also J.K. Rowling, because why not? And book number 2 is The Silkworm, the sequel to The Cuckoo's Calling from the Cormoran Strike series. It's the second book in the series that so far had 3 books. And here's what happened. So J.K. Rowling, after writing the successful Harry Potter series, wanted to write an adult book, but she didn't want people to buy it just because she wrote it. So she wrote The Cuckoo's Calling under a pseudonym, Robert Galbraith, and no one bought it until it was revealed that it was her who wrote it, and then everybody complained on how bad it was. To her defense, what I think she tried to do, and I said it in my review on The Silkworm, that she tried to create an old school style detective book, which relies mostly on legwork, on detective work, and not so much on technology and action. The problem was that it was indeed very, very boring. But JK being JK, she fixed things in the second book, in my opinion, and that might be a bit of an unpopular opinion. I think people either really loved the entire series or hated all of them, but I found the Silkworm a lot better, a lot more interesting, especially due to the abundance of really colorful, crazy characters. Not so boring now, isn't it? Number 3 is Shadowscale, sequel to Seraphina by Rachel Hartman, and I did a double review on both books, so in case you want to see my entire opinion about them, check it out. I will link it below, and you can probably see it somewhere around here, around me. Anyway, so this is one of those cases where the first book was absolutely fantastic and I loved it, and I was really worried that the second book will be bad because that sequels have a tendency to sometimes ruin first books. And in this case, Rachel Hartman actually managed to find a perfect formula for the second book. The second book, Shadowscale, is a chronologically continuation of the first book, but explored other things. Basically what she does is finding the perfect balance between, on one hand, making things new and exciting so people will not be bored or feeling as if they're reading the same book twice, but on the other hand, still chronologically continuing what happens in the first book, referring to things that happened in the first book and not just breaking all the rules and writing something completely different. Shadowscale is a perfect sequel. I'm just only sad that it's the last book of this short series. Okay, next book is a bit strange because it's pretty much anything after the first 2 books in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. In case you don't know Discworld, this is a comedy fantasy series which does have an order, but you don't necessarily have to read it in this order. It's not like chronologically continuation, and it has a few like sub-series. There are a few books that centers on those characters and on those characters, but the actual first two books of the series are called The Light Fantastic and Color of Magic. There is a chance that I'm saying that in reverse order. But I started reading them and they were, in my opinion, extremely boring. I actually gave up on Discworld. I thought, you know, it's simply not my style of series. But then I read Monstrous Regiment, which was fantastic and just proved to me that not the entire Discworld series is so boring. Sorry if you like the first two books, I just didn't. And I can safely say now that I much prefer books about the Watch than about Rincewind and Toothflower. And I think that in Discworld you just have to find your niche and like the kind of characters that you like to read about, and you find, I don't know, the funniest or the most interesting and just stick to them. Okay guys, we're up to number 5, and this one's a spin-off. The Nursery Crime series, which is a spin-off of the Thursday Next series, both by Jasper Fforde. Both theories take place in a world where the real world and the fictional book world are kind of intertwined, and they're about some sort of police force called jurisdiction that deals with keeping the balance and the peace between these two worlds. The Nursery Crime division is actually a subdivision of jurisdiction that deals with nursery rhymes, and while in The Airfare, the first book of the Thursday Next series, Thursday, who's actually a character, tries to find out who kidnapped Jane Eyre, Jack Spratt of the NC division tries to find out in The Big Over Easy, the first book of the Nursery Crime series, if Humpty Dumpty's death as a result of falling off a wall was an accident or not, and I just thought it was brilliant. The series unfortunately only has 2 books so far. I have no idea if he's going to continue it. I really hope he does. He does continue the Thursday Next series, which I did like, but I have to say that after a few books, I really got it out of my system, although I am currently trying to read the book that I haven't read yet, which is I think the 4th in the series. But I do find the Nursery Crime series a bit better, a bit more interesting, a bit more refreshing, and I find also the pace a lot more interesting and better. Okay guys, I talk about my favorite book sequels. Now let's move on to the worst sequels in my opinion. Since I started the first list with Harry Potter, let's start this list with another very famous YA series, and this one is the 3rd installment in the Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins, Mockingjay. Let me start by saying that I liked the series, but the only one that I really loved was the first one. The second one was okay, but the third one made the classic trilogy mistake of too little or too much. It's gonna sound like a really strange comparison, but you know how when you have leftovers and you want to eat them, you have 2 options. Either you take a huge portion, but then you actually finish what's left in the fridge, or you take a normal size portion, but then for the next time you have way too little for a normal portion. You have kind of to make a decision between the two, you know, the important choices in life. That's what happened in the 3rd book. I mean, it felt like most of it were fillers because she did not have enough plot for an entire book portion. Number 2 is a 2nd installment of another series, and I actually have it here. It's the 2nd book of the Millennium Trilogy, The Girl Who Played with Fire, sequel to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I actually don't have the 2nd book, if you can notice. I have only the first one and the 3rd one, which is incredibly annoying, but that's not the point of this video. So I loved The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It was so refreshing because I thought, you know, it's gonna be a modern day thriller filled with action and no content, but it was brilliant, it was thrilling, it has the Agatha Christie whodunit feel because it was set in such a confined environment. It was on this island focusing on a family of, you know, group of people, and I loved it. And then it was very disappointing from the 2nd book, which the concept is that it takes place in the city, which already ruined for me the whole whodunit confined feeling, and that's really a matter of opinion. A lot of people really loved the 2nd one. I, by the way, did not finish the 3rd one. And I personally also felt like the adding of Elizabeth's history didn't really add to the story. It was just a way for the author to create another mystery with Lisbeth and Michael in it, you know, and just creating more interesting stuff regarding those characters. Once again, a lot of people will disagree, but I love the first book so much that the second one just ruined everything for me. Okay, the third one will surely give me some hate comments because it's a very well beloved series, and the book that I'm talking about is, I think, kind of a spin-off sequel of a sort. It's The Giant's Shadow, a sequel kind of to Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Now, as a kid, I read Ender's Game. I really liked it. I doubt that if I read it again today, I will love it as much as I loved it back then. It was the first science fiction that I read. It was cool, etc. You probably know the book. And it's another unpopular opinion, but I actually really like the trilogy that chronologically happens afterwards, you know, with the Speaker of the Dead and Genocide. I actually did like those, but then I read Shadow of the Giant and it was absolute bore. And if you don't know what it is, it's like the events, most of the events of the first book, but being told from another character's point of view. And of course, the entire beginning is on his life before he met Ender. So it's something different, but I just felt that it was a complete waste of time. I didn't find it interesting. I was wondering if it's going to be interesting once he gets on the ship, and I don't even remember. I just remember being bored. I don't think I even finished this book. And I like Orson Scott Card less and less, both because the way he behaves in real life, and also because I just find the entire Ender series, starting with, I don't know, the 5th book or something, just as a way for him to milk more and more money from the original Ender Game book. You know, write something else, for God's sake. At number 4 is a prequel, and that's The Angel's Game, a prequel to The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. And The Shadow of the Wind is an amazing book. It's so magical. It's not really fantasy, I mentioned that before, but it's just a beautiful book which I recommend to pretty much everyone. But The Angel Game, you could just pass on it. Reading The Angel Game is like watching the 4th Pirates of the Caribbean movie. It has absolutely nothing original, but you just feel like watching anything with Captain Jack Sparrow again. Angel's Game to Shadow of the Wind is exactly that, a shadow. It has the same silhouette, but it's nothing compared to the original. The only good things about the Angel's Game are the parts that are kind of ripped off from The Shadow of the Wind, and as much as I missed that kind of a plot, and that's why I read the Angel's Game, later I found out, hey, I could just reread Shadow of the Wind, which will be a lot better. And now we're down to the last book, the worst sequel, and I know that this list was in no particular order, but I saved the worst for last. Why, oh why was this book created? Roald Dahl, what have you done? Why did you write Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, a sequel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Did you guys know that Charlie and Chocolate Factory had a sequel? Don't worry if you didn't. So Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator continues where the first book left us, which is where Charlie's grandfather and Willy Wonka are about to go and pick out Charlie's family to a better future when something strange happened to the glass elevator, which takes them all, the entire family, takes them all to space, where they encounter aliens. I'm not kidding you. I was reading it as a child. I was like, WTF? You know, not really. I didn't really know what those words mean when I was, what, 10 when I read it? But God, it's such an awful sequel. It's just terrible. The first book was magical and chocolatey and funny, and the second book just stinks, and I would rather pretend as if it doesn't exist. So let's erase Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator from our collective memory and just reread Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which was a wonderful children's book. And that's it for my review. Thank you for watching this video, and I'm dying to know if you agreed or disagreed with me. What was your worst sequels or best sequels, or a sequel that were better than the original? just write it down below and let me know. If you like this video, please click like to show it and subscribe to my channel if you dare, and if you want some more videos, both reviews and lists and hauls and everything literature related. And until next time, cheerio!